Okay.
We're on the air.
All right, great. So this is the next hangout for Associated Press Photo Managers, or APPM. Some of you may be joining us through YouTube. Some people may be joining us through our website, which is apphotomanager.com. We encourage you to go onto your social media and share the link. Pat will go into how to ask questions in just a second. AP Photo Managers is a community for photo editors, newsroom managers, and photo educators to talk about the business and the industry and kind of form a community around that. So we're really excited to be doing these hangouts. We have a number archived discussing everything from documenting Ferguson to video in newsrooms to editing graphic images for publication. So we hope that you check out those past ones as well as sharing this one. This one will also be archived for view if you want to share it with people afterwards. And we're really excited to start a new collaboration with the Photo Brigade. So this will go up on their website, which is photobrigade.com/live. And so we're really excited to spread the love over to them as well. So today we're going to be talking about working with analytics and photo departments and newsrooms. Pat, before I go around and introduce everybody, do you want to talk to them about how to participate in the conversation as we're doing it live today?
Absolutely. So there's a couple ways you can ask questions during the discussion, and we'll get your questions answered live here. Just right in the video chat, there's a little over on the left side. You'll see a little tab that says Q&A, and if you click on that, you can just type us questions, and I can see those, and then we'll put those to the panel. Or you can tweet at AP Photo Managers, and we can take your questions that way too. So whichever way is easiest for you, we'll get your questions answered live.
Yeah, we encourage you to share comments with us, chime in with questions, all that good stuff. So just kind of run through the introductions. I'm Becky Sell. I teach at Ohio University in the School of Visual Communication. We have Pat Traylor, who's a photo editor with the Denver Post.
Howdy.
We have Nancy Andrews, who's the Chief of Innovation at the Detroit Free Press.
Hello there.
We have Liz Worthington, who's the Content Strategy Program Manager at the American Press Institute.
Hey, everyone.
And Andrew Scott joining us from the road. Yay!
Greetings.
Who's the Director of Multimedia at USA Today. So
I'm not driving. I'm not driving.
Not driving. Off on the side of the road, right? We really thank you guys for taking your time this afternoon to join us and talk with us about this. We think it'll be a big help to people who are out there working in their photos departments and newsrooms. So we thought that a good way to start would just be to get each of you to, tell us a little bit about your background, what you're doing right now in your jobs, and how you're interacting with this whole analytics system, right? So Nancy, I don't know if you want to start.
Oh, I can, yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that's important is that when we talk about analytics, we are talking about people. It's not just these numbers, oh, we're going for numbers, but these are people. And so we have more information now than we've ever had. We can know how many people are on our site, what devices they're on, and for video, we can know, how long are they watching the video? Where is that drop-off? And so there's just so much to know, and think of it as audience and people and how people are interacting and working with your work, not so much numbers and analytics and metrics and data. That sometimes has gotten, has become a bad, data has become this like four-letter word or something. So I can go into details with that later, but I would just say, we're talking about people and their use habits for our content.
Okay, great. And what do you do at the Detroit Free Press, Nancy, as the Chief of Innovation? Can you give us a rundown on that?
It's a new position. I get to do whatever I want to do. Not quite like that, but for right now, we have been working with 3D tours. We've had a few experiments where we used at the auto show or telling stories where the space is the interesting thing. Where we're doing a tour of a shrine, a Catholic shrine that's going to turn into a basilica, and so that's where people are very interested in that space. And so we're doing things where you would be able to virtually walk through that shrine, now basilica, and give it a tour. So exploring things like that, and then little things of using analytics better. So all over the map.
Okay, great. Thank you. Liz, you want to fill us in on what you're doing with American Press Institute?
Sure. Thanks for having me here today. So my background is in newspapers. I worked at small community newspapers before moving to online journalism. And now, since June, I've been working at the American Press Institute. We have a software that's called Metrics for News. We work with about 40 publishers, and we help them better understand their audience by tagging for their journalism qualities. So one of the things that we hear a lot is that people get frustrated with conventional analytics because it turns every story into its own isolated case. You know, you can see if your traffic is increasing to your website, you can see if a story does well, but you don't really know why. And so we've created a system that allows people to tag for their journalism qualities and essentially transform their metrics into really powerful journalism metrics. So you can look at any content area and see, you know, what's working inside my education coverage or in my environment coverage, and why is that working? Why are people engaging with me, and how are they engaging with me? And visual elements, photos especially, video, are a big part of that. So I have some data to share later on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Liz. And Andy, how about you? Can you mind describing what you're doing at USA Today and how you're working with all this?
Yeah, my current position is Deputy Director of Multimedia. It's kind of traditionally would be considered the Director of Photography, but you know, we obviously are dealing with, you know, photos and video and multimedia, trying to corral all of that and everything that entails. You know, kind of how I interact with metrics kind of on a daily basis is I'll send a morning note out to the newsroom, you know, kind of saying what we are working on, you know, what we're shooting during the day that's live, that's what are we shooting that's advanced, and then I also will look at our morning omniture reports that come up at 3 and 4 in the morning and highlight things that have done well online, you know, and also point out things that might need additional promotion. You know, that whether we have galleries or videos that they're doing particularly well, you know, to point out to our folks that man the home front, which is, you know, our website. You know, they're the ones that program the, you know, the website, the mobile, the tablet apps. You know, kind of pushing them to, you know, what is doing well or what's not doing well.
Okay. So with that in mind, do you guys, I know Nancy, you kind of kicked this off, and Andy, you've touched on it too, and Liz as well. What are, you know, we think of this analytics term, and I think I told you all earlier that some people say that they don't care about analytics, some people do, and I think you brought up that it's about an audience and the people behind these numbers that we're seeing. Can you go a little bit more into what they mean to you in your daily work?
Well, I think you have to interpret them differently based on what they are, because they can be very distinct audiences. You know, like as Nancy says, there's a person behind each one of those numbers, and one thing that analytics and you know, the data we get, it really highlights that. You know, when we would go back, say, 10 or 15 years, we would think about the newspaper, you know, the prototypical newspaper reader, and we would structure the newspaper around what we envisioned that reader was. And I think now, with, you know, being able to kind of viewing habits in the web and being able to see that in a very granular level, you're able to discern, you know, there may be very distinct audiences that may or may not cross over on certain, you know, certain topical areas. Like you may have a very sports specific, you know, readers that are interested in specific topics, and you can tailor content specifically to them. Like I just got back from LA editing the Oscars, and that's a perfect event that has a very, very high interest to, you know, a certain type of lifestyle reader, and that's one of our highest traffic events a year. So we devote a lot of resource to that, you know, because it's, you know, we had 8 figures in terms of traffic just on a red carpet gallery, you know, in like 36 hours. So I mean, there's, you know, some of it is like being able to recognize what where you do have these big traffic peaks, and to be able to put resources behind it, and maybe it's to go to your upper management and say, I need to be able to send 3 people to this event because it does draw a significant amount of traffic.
Nancy?
Yeah. Well, I want to echo what he's saying too, and I think that you want to look at the sources. You want to understand what's working and not working for the same reason as you would say, hey, I want to send 3 people to this event. There also might be things as, I don't want to send anyone to this event.
Yeah.
And we have that issue as well. And then sometimes you go, well, wait, no, I want to send someone to that event, but that's gotten no views, but it's important. So then it's on us to go, it's not good enough to just send someone and say, oh, build it and they will come just because we think it's important. If you know you've got an important story that we feel is our journalistic duty to tell, but no one's watching it, then how do we frame it? What can we do to draw people into that story? Whether it's with video, whether it's with text, whether it's on social. Like, I'm excited to hear about the tools that, divide it up. Like, I think that's an interesting thing, to look at education and then what pieces of it were resonating. There's so many tools out there now, and it really is worth exploring.
I think that's a really great point, because I love how Nancy talks about data as people, but it can really be used as a tool to inform your editorial decisions. And, people used to operate, and many maybe still do, just on their gut and habit, but data can help inform if our gut and habit are in the right place, if we're making those right decisions. And one of the things we've really learned in our research that we've done here at API is the biggest determinant for where people go for news is the topic. It's not their demographics, it's not their politics, it's the kind of information they're looking for. And one thing that we really encourage and work with our publishers on is helping them create knowledge around a topic. So it's not just covering a story or going to an event or shooting a photo essay. It's what do people need to know about this particular content area, and how can you create knowledge around that? Because sometimes, the news story itself has kind of become an artifact where you maybe in the traditional sense, your news story was you expected people to kind of know something about it. But now people can come in at any time they're interested in something, and you want to give them information that helps them understand that topic better. Whether it's, I love the 3D tour of the Basilica. That would be something I would look for. Like, that sounds amazing. Or, a photo gallery from the red carpet. So giving people different opportunities to dig in is hugely helpful, and you can use data to figure out what are those topics that people want to dig into and how are they engaging with me on this.
Okay. Do you all think that each of you have kind of brought this up, do you think there's, is it a danger or not that we start to steer our coverage as news organizations based on what's getting viewed by people? How do you balance that with the reporting that you feel like needs to be done? I know, Nancy, you had brought up trying to find different innovative ways to tell stories so that it's connecting with audiences. Andy, you had brought up devoting more coverage to things that are part of the expected news coverage from your publication, right? How do you balance that and not run into the demand for more clicks and hits, for example?
Sorry.
Well, I think, obviously news judgment you have to exercise news judgment. This is just one, analytics is one tool to be able to inform those decisions. I hope it's like equal part highlighting things that are happening or drawing traffic on your site that you didn't realize, and the other half is maybe either validating or disproving kind of your where you thought your traffic was coming from, and then to be able to kind of to sway resources one way or the other. The one thing that I've found interesting is it does highlight. Analytics has been able for me to highlight areas that maybe I didn't think were doing particularly well, but actually did have good long tail traffic, good consistent draw on the web, but would never show up in like the top 20. you know, like just for example, like you know, I went to school with David Gutenfelder, and so when I was working on the news desk before I was in my current job, I just sort of started a habit gallery of like anytime David moved a photo, I'd create this gallery of life in North Korea, and I'd just, you know, add 2 or 3 photos when he'd move pictures, and that gallery just started to consistently draw traffic. It was never like the top 10 on the site or among galleries, but it was a consistent draw. And so that sort of informed me, like, there are topical areas like that you can build gradually, and that people will realize you have that there as you know you're like a subject expert in that. That's where they can look for you to find that content, and that incremental additions on a topical area, people will come to you, and they will keep coming back to look at updates.
One thing I would add is, you know, there's so much more to journalism than page views alone, and we often hear, you know, what is the metric that matters most? There's a lot of debate about that, and at API we think, you know, all of the factors of engagement are important. Your page views are important. The amount of time people spend with your content is important. What gets shared socially is important. And we've actually blended all those metrics together into what we call indexes. So we have an index that we work with our publishers on. It's called the Overall Engagement Index. And it blends all those metrics together to give them one single number to look at their engagement. And they do have the ability to customize an index for their own company too, if there are certain things that they value higher than others.
Nancy, how about you? How do you think being able to see the numbers drives coverage?
Well, I think that we have to, well, I'd like to take it into extremes. So if only 2 people watch something, is that worth your time? Is that worth that audience? Were we successful? Versus, you know, the extreme of clickbait of something that, so you had 1 million people watch it, but it was pointless. You know, there's something in between, and I find that people in our industry are hesitant to talk about the to trumpet numbers when we used to trumpet them all the time as a newspaper. We'd say, I work for this newspaper and it's 1 million circulation, or it's what, you know, like everyone read everything in the newspaper. Now we know, and now we know what's resonating. That said, you can pick your audiences. So we know that some stories, packages, I'm not just talking video, that we do might have a very small audience, but it's maybe a very pivotal audience of decision makers or stakeholders, and it's, you know, maybe it's the governor and the, you know, people in legislature, or, you know, or whatever it might be. And so it doesn't matter necessarily for that particular story, but maybe there's an element of that package that we need to bring that story to a larger group to show this is an important thing that we need to decide, and this is how it affects people, and we can't be sort of silent with that. So I think it's more of the challenge. If we think of something's important, we need to recognize we have the data to show that people are not, we're not hitting the mark. People are not sharing it on Facebook when we wrote about it. You know, it's like, you know, the tree fell in the forest and no one heard it. So what do we need to do so you hear the tree? And that's where I think that the best use of it is. And it's not that everything has to be huge, but what's the audience? What's the point? What's the why behind that journalism? And so that's what I want to know with it, related to it.
How does that translate to the rest of your newsroom and publication? Right? Are you the trumpeter of that information in your newsroom, or do you find that there's a collaborative conversation that everybody's a part of?
Well, I mean, I think it's growing and working at that. So at the Free Press and among other Gannett properties, especially the publishing, there's been this whole push with everyone having the data at their fingertips. And it's actually, what's interesting is that it's not as overwhelming when you're looking at your data and you have a dashboard as a reporter and you can see this is how many people came into my story. They came from Facebook or Twitter, or gee, look, when I shared it on Twitter, I got this result, and it's information that's really actionable by them. And they're like, why did this important story not get as much? And so we've rolled that out to everyone in the newsroom. And so everyone has their sign-on to Adobe Analytics. Everyone has Chartbeat that they can look at their stories and see how far people are reading in a particular story. And it's more information. You can be a better journalist. Imagine if you were a novelist and your best part of your novel's in page 200, but the Kindle sends you information and says, everybody stops reading at page 150. Then what do you do as a novelist to write better to get you to read to page 200? So in that, not everyone is at it 100%, but the information is not out there. It's not guarded in this one particular spot that only a few select people can see. We're very free with our information. So different people at different levels of questioning and engagement, but those conversations are happening more and more.
I think that's what Nancy says is a really important point about kind of freeing up the information in kind of a much more democratic way within the newsroom. It's no longer just the purview of one or two people who are kind of the holders of that data. Like in our newsroom, we have a central news hub in the newsroom, and there's 10 TVs around the newsroom. The largest TV is most of the time running live data. And it's scrolling between, as Nancy says, Chartbeat, Omniture. So you can see kind of the entry points, exit points. You can see what's trending up and down. One other part of that I think that's important is for people to be able to kind of work with their social media teams to how they promote their stories, stories or galleries or videos. Because just little small changes like how you write a headline in social, it's not the same headline you would write to put on the website or put in the traditional paper. That's not to say that you want to go all the way to the clickbait headline, you won't believe what happens, see what happens next, stuff like that. But our social media team has been very helpful with that, and just little tips and ideas on how you do that when you're putting links out, because so much of our traffic now is driven via Facebook or via Twitter. Even Google as a traffic driver is sort of dropping in relative comparison. And so it's things like headlines. It's being able to put visuals with your tweets. We're experimenting a lot with cutting down a video piece to a real 15-second, almost like a teaser that goes out on Facebook that then links back to the story, because that will autoplay when people come through. And a lot of it is at the level of experimentation and see sort of what works and what doesn't work.
Just to kind of each of you have brought up different types of analytics that you're looking at and how they tie into the people who are viewing the content and absorbing the content, sharing the content. Is there anything in particular, I know a lot of people may be new to getting that information to them, away from just Andy, you brought up, away from just a few people who hold the numbers into being more open and free. So I think this is new for a lot of people to be able to see this. Is there anything in particular that you're looking at that's really important to you versus things that you just kind of say, I can see that, but it's not my main concern? Like you had brought up, entering in from social media has now driven how you're spreading your content around, or how long people are staying with a story, if that makes sense. What were your top things that you really care about?
Well, I mean, the main thing is we still want people working on content. That's their primary focus. Is whether they're shooting images, shooting video, editing photos or video. I mean, that's still their primary focus. It's just we're sort of layering in as part of that kind of workflow. Like, okay, think about how you're gonna promote this now. Or like an editor when they're kind of talking out a story assignment with a photographer, they're thinking about, okay, you know, not only am I going to need to like edit a gallery or edit the video, I need to think, what's the kind of promotional strategy on this? Is this a story that has particularly cool, you know, visual snippet that I can use as an entry point to draw the reader in to actually check out what you've produced, because, you know, we as news consumers are just, there's an overwhelming amount of information out there, so you sort of have to help the reader into you know, into your stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important. I mean, for us, because we have been working on this program that helps transform your analytics, the content is really the key piece for us. You have the ability to tag for things like, how much enterprise reporting went into this? Did I include a photo or a video with this? You know, what job is this doing for the reader? Is this something that's simply meant to start a conversation? Is this something that's meant to explain something about a complex system? So by tagging for those things, you are transforming your analytics into really journalism metrics. As far as everything else goes, you know, we definitely pay attention to page views, to reading time, to social sharing. All of that is important, but when you combine it with your content data, you can get something really powerful.
That's really interesting. So you can actually tie in the underlying purpose of the content that you're trying to communicate into how the numbers that you're getting from viewers are combining?
Yeah, and you know, Nancy was talking about providing journalists with actionable data. We do that sort of at a bigger level, where we work with our publishers to give them, the program is really more of a strategy tool. So you can dig in and say, okay, when I include photos with my environment coverage, I'm getting 50% more engagement than if I don't. Or, you know, what's working in my education coverage? People seem to be resonating with this more when I'm helping them solve a problem or explaining something, as opposed to maybe something for the record or something family related. So it gives you the ability to kind of see how and why people are engaging with you outside of just the pure numbers.
Nancy, how about you? Is there anything in particular that like impacts your daily work? Yeah, I know you talked about time with stories was really important to you.
Right. You know, I'd actually like to show some things. Would that be possible if you let me get to because I think that if I can share my screen. Mm-hmm. Do you have me on that, or do I need to do the share screen over here?
Yeah, you just go for it, and I'll make sure it gets
all
out.
right. So I think I'm sharing the screen. So I want to show you. Are you seeing the analytics engagement video screen right now?
Mm-hmm. As you're doing that, I'll just double check it on the view side, make sure everybody else is seeing it.
Sure.
If anybody watching wants to tell us that you're not seeing this full screen, that would be great.
Right.
So, but go ahead, please.
So, okay. So we've talked a lot about the numbers of, you know, the number of people looking at a video. So we're going to have, what I've got is a video here that we did. Actually, Ryan Garza did the video of a man who walked 21 miles to work each day. And so this was a gangbuster video for us. It got a lot of views, but then how did it perform? And so I'm just going to play. I'm in Bright Cove right now, and I'm looking at video engagement. I can look at the performance. I can understand where the videos, how many of them were played virally, meaning they were played on another site other than the Free Press site. They were played on Huffington Post, or they were played on you know, anybody that embedded the video, and I can see how those do. I'm just looking at the overall video for this, and so on just Monday, February 2nd, which the date is up here in the upper right, this is the view that you've got 257,000 starts. Now this is a high video for us, so I don't want to, like, you know, we're really happy if also a video gets, you know, we're getting a regular audience at 3,000 and 5,000 views. Okay, so I'm gonna press play over here, and you can see over here how the video engagement is going. And sometimes And now I'm going to stop it there. So I can look here and see how many people stayed with the video versus dropping off. And you see that the curve was a little bit steeper when I went through to the, was having that credit, and it begs us to question whether or not we want these intros and outros because we lose people. And this is people who've already sat through the ad, okay? And then I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it all the way to over here. And oops, let me get it back to here. I can typically see that, so the video is playing. I've gone through the end of the video.
I've said this before. No one can say I didn't pay my dues in life. No one.
And it's actually pretty clear that that's the end. Now it's got the credits. And so you have the video drop off. That doesn't say, oh, I don't want to have credits at the end. But it just allows you to understand what's happening at that curve. But I'm bringing that in to show you what you can learn. This is a pretty good curve. This is pretty great. You've had, nearly half the people watched all the way through the end to the credits. And this was a longer video, too. So, a lot of times people throw at you, oh, people only watch short videos or people whatever, It's like people only watch while they're engaged, If it's boring for 45 seconds, they're not going to watch all 45 seconds. But if it's engaging for 3 minutes or 7 minutes, they'll watch that too. And we've seen that. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a tool. And, if there are any questions about that, I want to show you another video where it's got a real difference in the curve. Y'all see that? This is a shipwreck hunter in the video, and I'm just going to play it here for a little bit. And what's key in sort of marketing, we did a great job. We had a picture of a scuba diver going through the water, and that was the teaser image on this.
The state has always been of interest to
but
me.
we'll just you'll see where you are on the video.
Pre-Civil War side wheelers.
And so
They were such important ships.
I'm going to pause here for a little bit here. So we teased you with a scuba diving video because it's about ships, but then we led in with a video with this guy painting, and it's a really wonderful setup. Probably would work really well in a theater type of setting, but in a digital setting where people are choosing, people come and go. So the painter goes on for a while.
Change it to reflect what's actually on the wreck itself. It just seems to have this drive.
So it's not until we get over to here where we're in the water and you're clearly what we sort of advertised that the curve is not so steep. And so that's, it's an interesting information in how you tell your story based on this sample size of 47,000 people looking at your video. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a way that we can understand the content.
So let me ask you this, Nancy. Has being able to see that sort of data over a longer time period kind of informed your decision on how you edit or present pieces?
Well, I think on these, it has shown us that the quiet start doesn't necessarily work on a digital platform, and I think it's sort of knowing your audience. That said, we've still done things because that's the way we want to tell the story. We have one that's a poem, and but that's the type of story and the way we're telling that. It's shown us, I think if anything, it's shown us that we don't have to make everything a package. I would have to show you some examples. We've got some, like there was a car accident, a car pileup along an interstate. It's a 100-car pileup, that type of thing. Just simply that raw video keeps people's engagement. We didn't need that. It would actually be worse if we put a person talking in front and later. It's better to just show the raw video. That has a higher engagement than trying to make it something else. When we're trying to tell a complex story like this, then yeah, we'll do that.
Well, I think you see that even in the CNNs of the world are, like on a breaking news event, are more than happy to go live off their iPhone, even though they have a SAT truck available, because that sort of grainy video feel gives them that, hey, we're here live, and readers engage on that for right or for wrong.
Well, I don't think people are watching it because it's grainy and shaky. I think they're watching it because it's intimate and puts them there. I think that if they had a non-shaky, non-grainy version of the same thing, they would prefer it.
Nancy and Andy, I know you guys were just talking about this. If you're doing a story that's told the way that you want to tell it, right, that you feel is the important way to tell it, or a certain type of coverage that you know is important, and it's not getting the viewership and the audience that you feel like is worth the time, right? Well, is that where, do you all have teams? Andy, you had mentioned you have a social media team that you're working with. Liz, you'd mentioned being able to see all these numbers based on coverage and topic and tying into how you're telling stories. Will you start to figure out ways to promote a story, to pump it out more, to try to increase people's knowledge that it exists? Or how does that work for you all?
Yeah, absolutely. If we have something that, you know, we've devoted resources to, and we feel it's, you know, it's a compelling story that we want to get out there, we're going to work with our social media team, because you sort of view that as, like, you know, it's promotion. And, you know, especially if it's a story that may have kind of a, you know, a softer entrance, or, you know, it's just a type of topic that people aren't, it's not a naturally viral video. So you are going to have to figure out a new, you know, a strategy on how you are going to promote that. You know, like we would do that. Like we've been doing a mental health series all year, and each one of those pieces, even though, you know, like on the web we publish it in a long form story, you know, we're trying to distill down sort of a different presentation that can be used, you know, in a social environment, to try and get people in that, because it is a long story that's going to require them some time to engage with, to really digest, you know, all the reporting, and, you know, and the videos and the galleries. But if you don't get them there and you don't get them engaged, it's kind of all for naught. So it's definitely something that we work with our social media team on.
Yeah, I would add that, like, we have an example right now. We have Julian Gonzalez is at spring training with the Detroit Tigers, and he's been doing, I'm trying to look these up, he's been doing some 360 pictures. What's different about them is that when you turn your device, the picture turns with you, so you be able to hold it, look around, and see how the picture is. And it just hasn't gotten the traction we thought it might need to do. So from our Facebook page, we talked to the marketing folks, and they're going to say, well, okay, well, we're going to send out a paid ad telling people about this content. We're going to send it to people who are only on their iPad or only on their iPhone, and also like the Detroit Tigers, and try to really go to that audience, because that's the person we want to see the content. It's not really a great desktop experience. It's more of an interesting iPad experience. So we're going to come back at that. We're not going to be like, okay, we published it yesterday and it's done. It had its shot. We'll resurrect it.
Yeah. Liz, are you finding that people are, you know, using the metrics for news tool in that way as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think catering your content to specific audiences is very important, and that's what we help people identify, is using this data to see what are the key content areas that are really engaging that I want to build my brand around. And you don't want to deliver content to the same audiences. You want to bring in a wide variety of people. And so you're able to kind of dig in and see, okay, when I cover environment, photos are hugely important. across all of our partners, we work with about 40 publishers. I just looked at our data this morning. We see when you add at least one photo to your stories, this is across content areas, you're likely to get 72% more shares than if you have content without photos. So adding visual elements is very important, and I think especially if you're trying to reach a particular audience, I think Nancy's plan was, brilliant. I think everyone who was interested in that would come, but photos make a big difference on social media, and so do videos, and whenever you can promote that more, especially when you have compelling photos or visual elements, you're going to likely bring in a larger audience.
Okay.
And it's interesting this realization that that most of us have known for a long time that photos drive a higher level of engagement, whether it's print or online. That you have a lot of people in the newsroom now that are coming to our visual teams for sort of help, for advice. I'm getting an echo from somebody there. They want to know, like, how do I edit pictures drive? I'm sorry, the feedback I'm getting is really bad.
Liz, it might be playing out of your speakers. I'm seeing a jump to yours, so I'm wondering if it's...
Sorry, I'll move my phone. It was a I'm messing up my words. It was a notification from Twitter.
Okay. But I mean, that has helped our team, being part of the larger newsroom, that they are coming to us to look for advice on how we promote things visually. Still getting really bad at somebody.
Yeah, I can't quite figure out. I'm hearing it too. Oh. Pat, maybe you can mute people's microphones and see if that helps.
Yeah, I'm trying that.
See if we can figure out where it's coming from. It's stopped. I'm not hearing the echo.
Yeah, I fixed it.
There we go. Now you can hear me? Okay. Sorry, Annie, to interrupt you like that.
But no, it's like, from the kind of traditional philosophy that you always want your visual editors and photographers to be really engaged in the newsroom, that, the social media aspect of it, that people in the newsroom are kind of coming to the realization that what people, we've all preached for a long time, that, okay, you really need good visuals with your stories to really get engagement. Analytics really shows that very, very distinctly, and so you are able to get more traction, to advocate for visuals, a lot of times because of that now.
Now can you hear me? Okay. That kind of brings me to my next question along with that is where, you all are seeing the information. It's being spread around newsrooms a lot more. Whose job is it to think about it? Are you sharing that with your photographers? Is it the editorial staff that's having these conversations? How do you steer it so that, I can imagine photographers saying, on one hand, they want people to see their work. On the other hand, they don't want it to impact how they're covering things, right? Like, how do you have these conversations about the numbers that you're seeing and the viewership that you're seeing within your newsroom? How are you all talking about it?
Hey, I'm going to jump off of unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. One, I'm going to challenge the premise of your question that knowledge of our audience shouldn't impact what we do as journalists.
So please do, yeah.
So I'm going to say, because someone mentioned, I think it might have been you, Becky, just talked about how we have our gut, and we think, we didn't know before what people were interested in, but we would go on this experience, and we often go on what we think makes a really interesting and compelling story, and sometimes we don't go on what is the information that my audience, my community needs. And sometimes it's not actually an interesting story. It's a fact box of information. Or I'll give you an example. We might go and cover an event, and we'll zero in on a detail, and it'll be a beautiful detail, but we don't give enough information for you to make a decision whether or not you'd want to go to that event. I mean, so that's not hardcore journalism, but to use that as an example, if I want to get a view whether or not I should go to the event, I might want more informational pictures as well as emotive pictures, and so I think it's fair to ask the question of what does my audience want to see? I mean, when I was a photographer, I always felt the weight of the audience, and this is back in the 90s, okay, no metrics whatsoever. It was like I would push myself to the front because I felt like I was standing in line with a million people and whatever I saw they would see. And so I think it's fair to have that audience over our shoulder. And then now I can't remember the other part of the question. Sorry.
Well, how are you communicating that with your staff?
This is very important to me. Is I, as an editor, am not looking at the engagement on every video and looking at where it is. That's not real. That's information for that photographer or reporter who created the video to look at, and for them to use it and grow better. It's this response that's not, there's so much information out there that's not being used by everybody. That, a smart person looking deep at their own individual analytics can, and it's their ethics that they'll keep and their decision making that I think will be, important. And so it's not. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's not a push down. It's use the information and become a smarter journalist as a result. Okay. So,
Liz, how about you? How are you seeing with this tool that you all are using? How are you seeing people have these conversations in their newsrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. We see it making a big difference. Most of the people we work with now are in early stages of the program, so we have about 13 papers that have been using the program for a year or more. And what they really end up doing is they identify some key content areas they really want to build their brand around, that they want to be known for, that they want to be great at, and the community recognizes this is the place to go for this information. It's not that you ignore all the other stuff that you did, but it serves as the magnet that draws your audience in. And that's really what we're trying to help people identify and build around.
can you show a dashboard or anything like that, or give us an example of how you're breaking down stories, or maybe that you had to have asked people in advance. It's other people's information. I understand that if you don't have anything that you can show.
Yeah, I can show you just sort of like some dummy data that doesn't belong to anyone in particular.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
'cause I can't quite picture what you're doing, and I'd love to see it.
Yeah, so let me pull up something here and I can share my screen. It might take me a second, Becky, if you want to go to someone else, and I will get it set up, and then we can share it.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, and Andy, I guess as Liz is pulling this up, how are you all? How are you having conversations about the numbers in your workplace? Because I know you're tied into a lot of, right? USA Today has this different type of audience, right? How are you all talking about the numbers? You had mentioned telling people what's going on every morning in the day to help put that out in social media team and things like that. So are you translating the numbers, or I shouldn't say the numbers, are you translating what you're seeing up, down, across, right?
Yes. Yes to all of this. I mean, because you do have to, some of that you have to manage up. Like you have to say, look, to your managing editor, like these photo galleries get like massive traffic. I need resources behind that. You have to manage sideways to your editors to say, I need, we need, these sort of topics are doing well, and we need to like have a certain level of, content churn, because we are feeding, the newspaper, we're feeding our own website and mobile, and we are also programming, for most of the Gannett papers, there's a, what they call Nation Now, which is basically like the kind of national, international component that is, that flows out onto the Gannett websites and TV sites to a lesser degree. So you're having to pay attention to all of that. On a more like concrete level, it's kind of like working with photographers, saying, okay, like what, say maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, you'd say, hey, we've got like we've had a rash of them, a big weather story, big snowstorms hitting, and we'd say, go out and do a great video, weather at the Capitol, and that would be something that they would turn out, and if they get it out at 3 in the afternoon, that's fine. Well, now it's the realization that our web traffic really starts to ramp up at 9 in the morning, so we need something out there pretty quick. So it's like getting people, getting our photographers to know, okay, we need to go turn something quick. It's not like a total finished polished piece. It's not something that you're gonna like put out for awards, but then follow that up throughout the day and build out a more complete piece. But that way you're kind of staging out content throughout the day and getting, I hesitate to use the word like kind of wire service photographer, but it is somewhat of that same mindset that you always have a deadline, and so you always need to be filing, because the audience that's on your site at 9 a.m. is not necessarily the same audience that's there at 10:30 or is there at noon. And every time that they're coming to your site, whether it's through mobile or the web, it's new to them. So if you want to keep that updated.
Great, thanks. I think Liz is ready to share the Metrics for News tool with us.
Yes, I'm just gonna do my 15-second video teaser here, because this is proprietary and it is something we ask everyone who uses it to sign a licensing agreement. But I do want to give you guys kind of a brief understanding of how it works so you can see. And if anyone is interested, I'm happy to follow. You can follow up with me later. But this is our app. It exists outside your CMS, and you get information like this when you've been tagging for a little while. And when I talk about tagging, I'm talking about tagging for those journalism qualities that you really value. What is this story about? What is this topic? How much enterprise reporting went into it? I guess I need to share my screen here so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay. Okay. Can you see my Metrics for News screen?
Yep.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So people tag things for things like, what is the story about? What is the topic? How much enterprise reporting went into it? What job is this story doing for the reader? Is this an explanatory piece? Is this for the record piece? Is this family related? Things like that. So what they learn over time, and this is just some dummy data, so you're not looking at any particular publication. What it does over time is it tells you, okay, for the last 3 months, it looks like my baseball coverage, my dining restaurants, prep sports, legalizing marijuana, those kinds of topics are driving a lot of engagement for me. And if you were a publisher, you could dig into any of these content areas to figure out, what exactly is working within these content areas or what's not working. I could go to the bottom of my list, and see, oh, my college sports are my least engaging type of content for the last 3 months. Why is that happening? I could click on that and find out why. I could look at my enterprise levels and see, okay, my major enterprise packages are bringing in a lot of engagement for me, but it's just 1% of my coverage right now. Maybe that gives you an opportunity as a newsroom to talk about, do we want to increase the amount of major enterprise that we do? It's nice to see that it's the leader engagement, because that takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your effort. But you can also see, how much of any particular enterprise level are you doing, and is that worth your while? Sometimes we see people spend 30–40% of their time on blogs, even though those are brief postings. Is that worth your time? Is that worth your effort? So those are just the kind of things. I can't show you everything, obviously, but I would be happy to follow up with anyone later on if they want more details on the program.
Hey, thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
You know, and I'm going to point out that even though you had dummy data in the, or in there for the uh, I forgot what you called it, the major enterprise pieces or whatever, but it's not all the clickbait, the story of what gets the most hits or what's most most engagement. Meaning, in engagement, I mean people stay with the story, they click on other things within the story, that they read it. For us at the Free Press, some of our major projects that we have put our most time and effort in are also our top stories packages for the entire year and have really long engagement time. So people, what you do learn from audience analysis is that people do respond to quality.
Mm-hmm.
So there's good news in this too. Sometimes people think it's just whatever Kim Kardashian is doing today, and that's, they don't really stay very long on a Kim Kardashian story, but they stay really long on something that is beautifully written. We have the analytics to show that they'll stay with that story and they'll scroll all the way down to the bottom.
I think quality is important, and I mean, it's not fair to compare your Kim Kardashian story to your school board story. That's why we created this program, so that you have the ability to compare like things to like things. How is my best education coverage performing next to my worst? And we've also, in terms of quality and long stories, that's another thing that we've seen is people will spend the time with a long form type of journalism if it's well done. Not everything has to be, 300 words.
And Nancy, I'm sure you're seeing that probably has a much longer tail too, that people are staying with it long, like they're coming back to it like the following week or month, as opposed to stuff that's just viral and news trend.
Right. But also it has a long tail for them, but also let's say we write an explanation on how Detroit went broke, or we give you some background thing, then every time we're doing a story, then that is a link in that story.
Yeah.
And so that resurfaces it, and then you'll see spikes when somebody else has shared something. So we have to participate in that long tail too, not just leave it to them, but most certainly we're doing better at that. Yeah. And sites behind paywalls or other things, I mean, there are all these other issues that affect that, but we're trying to show that you have that value. That's, we need people to pay for the journalism too. So.
As we're coming to the end of our hour together, I definitely don't want to cut anybody off, but do you all have any final takeaways for the photo managers who are out there as they're learning how to interact with the audience in this way, the viewers in this way, look at this information that you think is really key for them?
And also, if you guys could, I know we've mentioned some of the specific tools like Omniture or Chartbeat, but if there are, within that, if there are other specific tools that you can mention for people, that'd be really helpful.
Hmm. You want to kick off with final takeaways?
Yeah, I can do that. Or nope, Liz, you're on there?
You're on there.
Whoever wants to go first.
I'll just say, I think this has been a really great conversation, and I would just encourage people to not be afraid of the data, to look at it as a way to inform your editorial decisions. I think Nancy's point of thinking of it as people behind those numbers is really important, and you can learn a lot even with a little information when you're looking at your data. So if it feels like an overwhelming task, just start somewhere small where you can just kind of get a little bit more info about how your content is resonating with your audiences.
I think we've touched on a lot of those those points about audience engagement as people. I would people need to just bite off a little bit each day. Try something new, whether it's a new content approach or like a new way to look at your analytics and to say, okay, why did that photo gallery or video work well, or why didn't it work well? and then maybe experiment a little bit, because there is a lot of experimentation on this. I mean, we've mentioned, as far as tools go, we've mentioned, Omniture and Chartbeat, but just on like a kind of personal, individual level, you can do that just with your own Twitter account. Just go to, I don't have my computer in front of me, but it's like ads/Twitter/something. If you go from the top bar and click on ads, you can see your own personal analytics, and experiment with like doing similar tweets with a photo versus not having a photo, and writing an edgier kind of headline versus not, and you'll really see the difference in engagement from your content followers, and then you can carry those same sort of learned experiences into your newsroom.
Yeah, I want to build on that in that ask for the access if you don't have it. And it's everywhere. So there's Twitter, but also the Facebook page that your company has. Ask to be added to the analytics, to get analytics access to that, even if you're not someone that has the authority to post from your organization's page. And then look at that and look and see when most of your followers are on Facebook, and see which Facebook posts get performed the best. Do the same with the Twitter. And I would also say, look at how people find your content. Did they find it through search? Did they find it through social? Did they find it because another website linked to it, or are they your regular audience that came to your site? That we really talk a lot about how people find our work, and because more and more it's the work has to go find them for them to come to our site, and so we've got to be a part of that, and that the writing is really important, the writing around the video or the photos, that you're writing smartly, and ask copy editors for help, ask web editors for help, be part of that discussion, because there's not although someone mentioned that I can't remember who they were talking about the shared photos do really well on social. We know that, but there's not a lot of other things that let us know as much about photos. We can't search by, a lot of the tools don't let you search by byline and other things, but just dive in and ask for the access.
Okay, great. Well, we've taken up a good chunk of your afternoons, and I really appreciate you all taking the time. Hopefully this is really insightful and helpful for photo managers out there and photographers out there as they're thinking about being able to interact with an audience and build an audience and get our work out there so it can be seen, and continuing the voice of journalism and photography. So I really appreciate your all's time. This will be archived again on apphotomanager.com. It'll also be archived with our collaboration with Photo Brigade /live, and so we encourage you to share this with your newsrooms, photo departments, things like that. We'll also be sharing some of the tools that everybody brought up during their time today, so that you can see some of the tools that everybody's talking about using. And then thank you so much for sharing the dashboards, Liz and Nancy, and Andy for taking a break from your road trip to talk with us from a car. I know that's not crazy.
Hey, it's anything to take a break from I-95 is a good reason.
Perfect office.
Right. Unless you hit rush hour around DC, and then not so good.
Thanks for having us. I've really enjoyed the discussion. Liz, I want to learn about the your different your metrics for news.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks for having me too. It was great to be here.
Yeah, it was great to be here with you all.
All right. Thanks so much to everybody. And again, we keep encouraging you all to join us for these Hangouts every month. If you have topics that you'd like us to discuss and bring up, just drop us a note and let us know. We're happy to gather a group to talk about it. So thanks a lot, Nancy. I think it was you who brought this topic up for us to talk about. And so thanks. It was a great conversation.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.